Well, howdy folks. I've got an exciting, groundbreaking new way to dual boot. I know looking at GRUB here, this looks like the everyday average dual boot, but I think you'll see once we get into it here, let me boot Windows, that it has a very interesting disk layout. This was a fun project, and I'm actually going to redo it in front of you and capture the video so that we can talk about it and I can show you how all the moving pieces work. It's actually deceptively simple, but it's hard to find the information online to build it. So let's go through it. I've actually been using this copy of Windows to do some work on. It works beautifully. It's not even on NVMe, it's just running on a regular SSD. And this copy of Windows is inside a virtual drive. But even though it's a virtual drive, it's running on bare metal hardware. So let me get to my demo slides here so that I can visually point at stuff. Okay. Now, all right. So why would you want to put Windows in a virtual drive? There's less chance of the bootloader getting damaged when Windows updates. That's one of the big problems with dual boots is Windows will go through its security updates just fine, but when it does a feature update, a lot of times it will overwrite the bootloader, and then GRUB won't load, and you have to go in and rewrite GRUB. This avoids installing some of the code that would cause it to do that in the first place. So since this setup doesn't really have that type of bootloader, it's probably not going to override it. Now, granted, I haven't tested this long term. I've just been using it for a couple weeks, but so far it's been rock solid. The partitioning layout of this disk, as you'll see as we progress here, the partitioning layout is super simple doing it this way. And if you go with the fixed size virtual drives that's originally was designed by Microsoft, they give you bare metal performance on Windows. I'm not making that up. It's statistically accurate. And then there's also the dynamically expanding virtual drive VHDX, and it is almost as good. I really, doing office work and stuff, I really cannot tell the difference. But from what I understand, the fixed size is a little bit more stable. And just pro tip, you can boot into a fixed size VHDX from a plug-in in Ventoy, if you know what that means. If not, don't worry about it. That's kind of neat. All right, moving on to the next point, durability. So making a backup is just as simple as copy pasting or duplicating the VHDX virtual drive file. If you're familiar with VirtualBox, you've probably done that before. You can't take an actual snapshot like you can in let's say VirtualBox, but just making a copy when you're testing Windows software at a certain state, wherever your OS, whatever state your OS is in, it will retain that state. It does take up quite a bit of space, but now you can probably run compression tools on it and zip it, like 7-zip or something like that, tar, something like that, if you needed to try to keep one of these so-called snapshots long term. They're actually a full virtual drive with the full copy of Windows. So because of being a full drive, it makes it very portable. It makes it very easy to change the SSDs. You can go up and down in size. And if you wanted to, say you wanted to install Linux Mint for a while, and then a month later you wanted to switch over to Fedora and then to Arch and so on and so forth, like we do when we're playing around with Linux, it will not risk the Windows install because the Windows install is just a file. It's just that simple. So I love that part of it. And as far as activation goes, that license is just like the real license on Windows. It's as good as long as it's on the same motherboard. It doesn't matter whether it's running in a virtual drive or a physical drive. If you have it activated on that hardware, it'll stay activated on that hardware for sure. And just simply overall, it's more versatile. Lost my pen tool there. Versatility. So continue using the PC's original OS by using this tool, and I'm going to talk about that more. Microsoft has an internal system tool to capture your running OS like a volume shadow copy, and then you can install this virtual drive that you made from your original OS back into the system as a virtual system, and the license, from everything that I understand about it so far, the license should still be active and it shouldn't know the difference. It should just be fine. With that in mind, let's go to the next slide now. One thing that's probably really important is we're going to be wiping. If you do this with me, you're going to be wiping your PC. So what you need to do is get a clone of your hard drive. Image it with Clonezilla is what I recommend. You can go through and do some research. There's probably 100 different ways to do this, and all of this software here is all free software, or at least free to use. So go through and do a little bit of research, create an image or a clone that's restorable back. If you're doing it on, let's say, a laptop with a single hard drive, go through and do a clone that you can restore the state of the hard drive back again once you're done playing around with this project. Please do that. Please take care of back up your files. So then to carry on, one of the things that you want to do is get your Windows, after you've created an image of it, you're going to start playing around with it. You're going to start compacting it. So to compact Windows, there's a system internal app that you can download from this URL called sdelete, and if you're on a 64-bit system, you use the sdelete 64 exe. And it's just as simple as following these instructions. You can pause it here and take a look at it. Basically, you just extract it and save it to under your C drive under the Windows folder, and it just becomes part of your Windows installation. And then when you launch the command prompt, since the C Windows folder is in the path of the command prompt, you won't have to do anything except for run the command just like a normal command, let's say like Notepad or something. So you run this following command to zero out the free space on the disk. Apparently a disk can compress and make more use of its space if you zero this free space out. So then you run this command, assuming that you're trying to compact the C drive there. So whatever drive you're trying to compact, this would be where you would add that letter, and normally it's going to be the C drive. Once you get done with that, you can type defrag in the taskbar. You're probably not on a hard drive, so you're going to be optimizing an SSD, but you will get there the same way by typing defrag in the taskbar and going to optimize drives and clicking that. It usually just takes a minute. Turn off fast startup. If you're familiar with dual booting Linux, this is something that you probably have already done. Anyway, you want to follow these instructions here and turn off fast startup. It's pretty simple and not risky or dangerous in any way. And then after that's done, I recommend a reboot. You may not have to reboot, but by the time you zeroed all of those deleted files out, and then by the time you optimized your drives, I figure a reboot's probably really good for the system before you start imaging it. Okay, and so this disk to VHD is what you run to image or make save a Windows virtual disk of your running system. Okay, I'll tell you more on the next slide here. So when you convert your system to a virtual disk, you'll go to this URL right here. It's a System Internals Microsoft made, or made by Microsoft application, and it's pretty simple. You just check Use VHD, and if you're on your running system, which I figure you will be, you'll use Volume Shadow Copy. You're going to pick a location. You'll browse right here with this button and pick a location for where you're going to store that file. Make sure that you have enough storage in the area that you pick. You may need to use an external hard drive, which is fine. And check the boxes of the system partitions that you want to make an image of. Okay. And you can go ahead and read this. Let's see. Let me read it for you. So disk to VHD is a utility that creates a VHD, Microsoft Virtual Machine Disk. I'm sorry, I skip over details. I can't help it. It just turns a physical hard drive into a virtual tool by running this on a system that's online, which is kind of a neat feature. All right, let's move on. So if instead of making a image out of your running system, if you just wanted to create a fresh install on a virtual drive, you can also do that. And it's kind of nice. It's definitely a great option, because right now I'm running the enterprise version of Windows 11. It's the 24H2. But regardless of what version that you want to run here, this YouTuber does a great job at explaining how to create a virtual drive and install a fresh copy of Windows on it. And you can just pick your version based on whatever ISO file that you download for the installation. And so I recommend going to this YouTube channel here, click Next Demos. And this video here, I've got the link right here. You can just type those, and you get to a smarter way to dual boot Windows. And if you follow this video all the way through, there's only a few little things that I would recommend changing just a little bit. Let's zoom in here on this screen. So when you get to the setup options screen, I would recommend going to the previous version setup, a little link down here in the bottom. Click that, and instead of going through this out-of-the-box experience for Windows 11, the previous version setup is the setup for Windows 10. And from what I hear, it's known to have, the newer one is known to have a bug that may prevent the installation of Windows 11 on a virtual drive. So that's good to know. I would definitely, go this route. When he's going through the installer, I might drop off and go this other way through that part of the installer. And then one other area that he works on that I would probably change just a little bit is this, when he's creating the virtual drive, I would go with 80 gigabytes, definitely. With Windows 11, it takes up quite a bit of space. I like the VHDX, so I would definitely go with that. It's the newer version. And for me, I think a fixed size runs better. And I also just think it's the best way to go, really. So without getting too deep in the weeds there, that's how you would do a fresh install. Follow this man's video. He's really good. Moving on here. So the disk partition that I'm on right now is right here. But this is the actual drive. This is the parent drive. In the parent drive, I have an EF booting partition, and then I have, this is where Linux Mint is contained, and it's just a full install of Linux Mint, and it's on ext4 storage. And then behind that I have an NTFS. This is just a storage container, a simple volume NTFS, and it contains a virtual drive file. That virtual drive file, since I'm actually booted into the virtual drive in Windows right now, and so it attaches when you're booted into it, and it shows up as C. So this 80, well, almost 80 gigabyte drive here is actually inside this storage drive here, currently on the system we're running. Let's take another look at that from a different view. This application here is gparted. It's another partitioning editor. The one that we were looking at over here, this is Windows drive management, and then this is gparted. So it's just a different view of the same drive layout. Excuse me, I had to clear my throat. Okay, so just what we're going to do, and what I've done here in the experiment is I grabbed me a drive. It's not a real big drive. It's like 200 and maybe 40 gigabytes or something like that. And what I did was I just let Linux Mint have it, and I installed Linux Mint on the whole disk. I cleaned it, and I let Linux Mint have the whole disk, and that way it got all of its boot flags and all of its files sorted just the way that it likes so that it can be efficient. And then I took gparted and I shrunk the ext4 that Linux Mint was on. I shrunk it back to where Linux Mint had about close to 60 gigabytes, right? And then with the free space here, this NTFS free space here, I formatted an NTFS, and then I took the Windows virtual drive file, and I just dragged that over onto this file system. So this right here, this file right here, is the hard drive that I'm running on right now as we speak. It's just a fixed size VHDX virtual drive file, and it takes up this yellow space right here. So that yellow right here is indicating space that is filled. That's 80 gigabytes, 85.9 gigabytes of space filled in this greater NTFS partition. And then I also have a folder in this shared partition, or in this NTFS partition, called shared files. And so what's nice about this is this virtual machine, when it's running, it can save and write and draw and read files from this shared files location. And Linux Mint can also read and write and execute files from this shared area, because Linux Mint can also work with the NTFS file system. So it works out pretty great. This is a really great setup. So let's see, I made a note here. Make sure that you allocate enough storage space for each OS to install programs and updates, but store personal files outside of each of them. Okay, so basically what I'm explaining is this is just a basic install of Linux Mint here, but when I get all of my programs installed, it'll probably take up close to, not quite, 60 gigabytes. And same thing here with Windows 11. Even though it's showing up as completely filling that 80 gigabyte space, the fact of the matter is, well, we can actually escape out of this presentation here for a minute, and we can actually go into that and see how much space we're taking. So this is our C drive. We're actually only taking up 37 gigabytes of the 80 gigabytes allocated. Okay, now let's jump back into the presentation. So in reality, there's only 37 gigabytes of this being used, and the other part of it here is free space. All right? Okay. I know it's a mouthful. Are you following so far? So that free space, we left that free space so that Windows can grow. I can install applications on Windows and update it and have enough room. Now, you can, just as a quick side note here at this point, you can expand these drives, whether it's fixed or dynamically allocated, they can be expanded. No problem. It's really pretty easy to do. So if you start off with 80 gigabytes and you want to grow it a little bit, that should be fine. Hey, buddy. I'm doing a presentation. My throat was getting dry, though. I needed to take a break.
Okay, well, I'll get it out of your hair.
Oh, I'm looking forward to hearing how your stuff goes.
The dinner?
Yeah,
You're welcome to have some.
I'll try to pop in.
Yeah, you can have a whole plate.
Okay.
There should be plenty of food. We've got burger, the ducks and the turkey.
Oh, yeah. There'll be more than you meat, won't there?
Yeah. Mashed potatoes, salad, cottage pie,
Yep.
be all kinds of stuff. 2 peanut butter pies. I'll make sure you get some.
Sounds good. Getting hungry now.
Well, dinner starts at 7, so 7 or 8.
I'll probably need a little snack here in a
You only
minute.
need something for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
I love you. So, yeah, you can expand these virtual drives, whether they're fixed or dynamically expandable. So don't let that, worry you that it says fixed and the other one says expandable. Here's what I'm talking about right here. See how this one says fixed size and this one says expanding? They both can be enlarged. The fixed size and the expanding can both be enlarged. Okay. All right. Let's see, what's the next? Okay, so the next slide is just going over again what I just said, that they can be expanded. So that's all the slides. Let's jump out of these. I can honestly never remember how to get out of them. Okay, now what we want to do, I think, is we'll just shut this down. Let me make sure that I have everything saved that I need. In my, not my backups, but in my demo for dual boot. Okay, I have this operating system saved. And so that's all I really need. I can go ahead and clear this disk. We're going to wipe this disk and redo it from scratch. I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. And while it's black screening here, I'll talk about Ventoy. I'm sure a lot of you have checked into it, but you can build a live USB with Ventoy, that's what I'm plugging in right now. It's an installation disk with Ventoy and all the tools that I need to do installs and computer repair. And then spam the boot key. You'll have to Google for the boot key that allows you to get into your BIOS. But I want to get into my BIOS and get into this Ventoy USB stick. On my Asus computer, it's F8. It's going to be different on each computer or, each model. So my Ventoy disk is right here on Partition 2. And this program just allows you to put all of these ISOs on a stick. It's pretty nice. We're going to go to the Linux Mint installer. That's where we're going to get started. It'll take a moment to boot. It's a pretty fast system, but it's never fast enough. Especially when you're doing a lot of installs and copying and all of that. It just takes time. I will say the NVMEs, they are a lot better. Well, of course, today I'm just doing this on a test SSD. I don't really want to involve my storage. I have my storage on the NVMe. You'll see it as we go through the install there. But I'm not going to mess with that. Okay, now that we're booted into the live version of Linux Mint that allows us to do the installation, this is Linux Mint's installer. So we'll go over here to the programs and files and type in GP for gparted, and then we're going to go ahead and open gparted up, take a look at our system. So this is the NVMe that I was talking about, and then I have another storage drive here, and this is actually the Ventoy that we're booted into currently. So that leaves only one drive that this could be that I've been explaining to you so far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the EFI partition that has all of the boot files and stuff that we'll recreate to get this all going. I'm going to delete this ext file or partition that has Linux Mint on it, delete that. And then this is Windows 11 with the NTFS file system. We'll delete that, and we're just going to hit View Device Information and make sure this is formatted GPT. That's really the best. I don't know what I just clicked there. That's the best partition table for a drive. So if your drive isn't initialized with GPT, to follow this tutorial, it needs to be. Now, there's other ways of using a BIOS, but I'm not going to go into it here. So I'm assuming that you are on a UEFI system. So let's go ahead and clear this drive. It just takes a minute to clear this drive. And now that beautiful install that I was booted into a minute ago is completely gone. It is no more. It is nothing. It doesn't exist. Kind of sad, really. It was so perfect. Here we go. This does take a minute. Not sure just how much I'll fast forward. I'll try to save as much time for you as I can, but on the other hand, I'm not gonna be in a rush because this is just really just a hobby after all. Okay. With Linux Mint, you definitely want to get online to do the installer, and you can see this little not taskbar. I see that it added my printer. Already picked it up. I'm going blank. These icons down here let us know that the internet's connected. Let's continue. All right, multimedia codecs. We definitely want to install those. Otherwise, you couldn't open a photo or anything. All right. So you could do something else, and that would give you a partition editor where you could manually install this without having to shrink the partition. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it in an easier way to understand. This is a little harder to understand. It works just as good, but you have to set boot flags and you have to go through all the drives and figure out the target and all of that. This is just easy. So we're going to go that route if you're following along with the way that I've chose to do it. and then we get a drop down, a simple drop down of all the drives, and I can, in a very simple way, I can see that this 256 gigabyte disk, it could only be the one that I want to install on. That has to be it. And then there's no other decisions to make. That's what makes it so simple. Go ahead and click install now. And you can double check to make sure that, see, this is marked SDA right here. You can make sure that both of the partitions that it's going to make are SDA and push continue. That way, any of the other drives in your system, if you have any, aren't going to get messed with. Let's put in my information here real quick. I need to come up with a system name, which is pretty challenging because I've done so many installs that I don't even know what to call them anymore. Let's call it system demo. Okay, quickly put a password in. Okay. Time to have some coffee. We've turned Linux Mint loose. Okay. Now, we could just go ahead and push restart right now. Let's take one more quick look at something. Let's open GParted again. I want to show you something that could probably mess someone up if they got in a hurry. So you might be tempted to come in here and unmount this and shrink it right now. But I want to draw your attention to one thing. Right here after it says ext4, it says target. That is the target for some files that have not been installed yet. So this install technically is not done until after the first reboot. So I'm inclined to think it might not be a good idea to shrink this partition yet. Let's do a restart and then we'll shrink it. I'm going to hit restart, and then we'll have to boot into the actual Linux Mint system that we just installed. And I think I'll spam my boot key. Well, I shouldn't need to because it's going to go into the SSD drive. It's going to pick that before it picks the Ventoy boot stick, I think. I sure do hope so. If you wanted to be sure, you could spam the boot key, but no, it didn't. It's going, I didn't see Ventoy at all. It's going straight into the SSD. So this is our new system that we just installed. And it just looks great. Looks like a new system. All right. There's not much for us to do here. We basically just booted into it so that those target files could be finished. And all we really do here now is just restart again. And we'll spam the boot key and boot into Ventoy so that we can do that really quick shrink and copy. Okay. Anytime now. Yep. There's Ventoy. And we'll just go down back into the Linux Mint ISO that we installed it from. We're going to use it as a tool. Since it comes with GParted already in it, you don't have to have a separate partition tool. Understand? And it's nice for copying the Windows files. There we are. All right. Now, GParted again. This time when we go into our smaller 238 gigabyte drive, we see that it's not mounted, and we don't see the root target label. So that means that it finished installing. We're ready to go. We can right click on this, click resize move. Now I'm going to bring mine down to about 58 gigabytes equals 60 gigabytes. You can do the math if you're particular, but that's what I'm going to go with there. I'm going to create that much unallocated space. And then in that unallocated space, I'm going to click right here to add a new partition. And I'm just going to say NTFS. And it doesn't need a label or anything. You just click add. And then this check mark right here. We would want to apply. It'll take a few minutes. It'd be a good time to go do something else. Okay, it looks like all operations have completed successfully. Close that window. And now there's the layout. All we're missing is the Windows file, which is just, it couldn't be easier. It's just super easy to put that Windows file in there. It does take a minute, so some patience will be required. But here's the NTFS file system that we just created. And now we need to find my storage drive that has that file in it. Here's Windows right here. All right. Boom. We're installing Windows. That easy. It's literally drag and drop. So cool. But that will take a minute. So again, another period in which I'm going to go do something else, and I'll be right back. And we are back. And we have Windows installed. Now we're not going to be able to boot into it yet. We've got to do a few more little things. This is the fun part. I don't know if I clicked shutdown or restart, to be honest with you. Sometimes it takes quite a while to shut down after copying files like that. All right, now let's go into Ventoy. And what we're going to do is we're going to get into the Windows 11. This is a Windows 11 ISO. If you were installing Windows 11, probably any Windows 10 or 11 ISO would do. What we need to do is get into the Windows pre-installation environment. There's a lot of different ways to do that, but this is one of the simplest, most straightforward ways. And you can, I just want to show you real quick, you can do Shift F10, I believe, to get right straight into it in a command prompt. But I'm going to do it graphically just so that you can see how to get there. So earlier in the slides we were talking about previous version setup. You would click there. Let's go ahead and click there now. And so if I click there and I go next, then I get this option to repair my computer. And this takes you into the Metro screen. And we can go into troubleshoot. And this way we can go into command prompt, and when we're done with command prompt, then we'll be able to do a proper shutdown. If you just pull up a command prompt from where we were at before, then you have to type shutdown. All right, so I have my notes installed on this same machine in one of the storage drives. And so what we need to do is pull up Notepad by just typing Notepad. And then you can use a few little graphics. I suggest going to this drop down and clicking all files so that you can more or less use this as a file browser. And take a mental note of the drives that we have right now, because the virtual drive that we installed in the NTFS partition while we were in Linux Mint, it's not attached yet, so it doesn't show up here. But it's going to show up, and when it does, it'll get a drive letter, and we'll need to know what that drive letter is. So for now, let's go into my storage here. I've got a folder where I saved some dual boot notes. This is what we need right here. We need notes. I'm not going to do it from memory, although I might be getting close to the point where I possibly could. I don't know. Anyway, all right. Actually, might want that. I'm being picky about how I'm organizing it. All right. So the first thing we need to do is attach the VHD that we copied in. So we're going to type in diskpart, which is a little commandlet. Actually, a pretty powerful commandlet. And then we're going to need to select the file that we put in there. So in order to do that, we need to know what drive letter that NTFS partition that the Windows file is in. So let's go find that by going to File, Open, and then go to this PC. We need all files here. And then it's probably going to be, yeah, see this 100 gigabytes free of 180 gigabytes. That's going to be it. And that's where our Windows 11 fixed VHD file is. So it's in local disk C. Now we can just cancel that because well, that's all we needed to know was what drive letter that was. So then that makes this line correct for my system. I can just go ahead and copy paste that in there. And so then it tells me that that file was successfully selected. Go ahead and talk, why don't you? Let's copy paste attach vdisk. 100% complete and successful. Okay. Now we have it attached. We should have a new drive show up. Yes, we do. We have actually more than one. We have an empty EFI. That's part of the new system. And then this is my Windows main setup. This is the almost 80 gigabytes mounted virtual drive now, and it's letter G. So remember that. Letter G. Cancel, cancel. And so the next thing we need to do is find and mount the EFI partition. So that's the one that Linux Mint created when it originally installed by default. Remember, it created one EFI partition at the front of that disk. That's what we're going to go find. And we can't really find that in a real graphical way that I know of, so we've got to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to type in list disk, and so it's the 238 gigabyte disk, so it's disk 1. So we're going to do, not disk 1, disk 0. We're going to do select disk 0. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste that in. And now the 238 gigabyte disk is selected. So we need to do list part, which is just short for list partition. And there, now we see partition 1 is that really small partition at the very beginning of the drive. Here's where our Linux Mint is, and here's where our Windows is. So this is our drive letter right here. We're just going to go select part, and whoops. It was SEL. You don't have to type out the whole word select, and part and 1. Select part 1. Partition 1 is now the selected partition, and now we just need to assign the drive letter. I'm going to use S because it's random, really. As long as it's not in use, you can assign any letter. I'm going to use S because it's part of my notes. Okay, so diskpart has assigned the drive letter S to this EFI system partition. Now is drive letter S. Okay, and so now the EFI partition is mounted. Okay, now we got to install the Windows Boot Manager into the EFI partition. All right, Windows PE will assign a drive letter to the Windows partition inside the VHDX. Let's assume it becomes W, but actually we now know that it became G. So we're going to change it to G in the command. Okay, because we looked in the file picker earlier. Remember this? Whoops. We don't want to mess anything up. What? Oh, because of a change. Let's forget that. Anyway, oh, you know what we could do? We could do save, and then we could do open, and we see our G drive. Hasn't been changed here. It's still G. Okay. So we're going to use the BCD boot tool on drive G in the folder Windows to copy to the EFI system partition that we mounted as drive letter S and force it to write to the UEFI with this command. All right. Nope, I made a mistake. All right, right up here, I skipped the word exit. We have to exit diskparted. That's an application. My bad. Now that we're in this, we can copy paste that. And it says boot file successfully created. Okay. Now, that's this line. Now to find the actual drive letter, oh, we already did that. And so this just explains what we just did, how we copied the files in. And it says that we can do that beside the Linux Mint install, which is great. I've never used this command before, but let's copy paste it in. It's supposed to verify that we have a boot entry. Okay. Leaving disk parted. Here's where we copy pasted that command in. Partition S, that's the partition where Linux Mint boots from. And now we have the Windows Boot Manager copied in right here on this path. So it's there. We confirmed that it's there. Now, what we should do is shut down and restart, and Windows should boot. It may need to be booted twice, but usually it just boots up the first time. After we see Windows boot, then we've got a few things that we need to fix from the Linux side. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this down now. And this is what I was telling you earlier. It gives you, if you navigate here graphically, you can turn off your PC graphically. Otherwise, you could type shut down in the command prompt. No big deal. All right. Now, I'm just going to boot normally. I'm just going to turn my PC on. And if everything went the way I expect it went, Windows will just boot on its own with nothing else happening. I'm not seeing it. Yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. That's Windows 11. That's the big guy. Mountain right up there. Very pleasant to see success. I'm very happy. I don't know if I'm as happy as Donald Trump, but I'm very, very happy. All right. And I'm in Windows. I like it. Let's take a look at disk management real quick here. All right. Back to where I was showing you we were at to begin with. This is the virtual drive that we're booted into. but now it recognizes the virtual drive as C, and this is the greater or the outer drive. This is where the boot drive was. This is where Linux Mint is, and this is where the Windows file actually lives. But when we're booted into it, it believes it's here in this 80 gigabyte partition. Go into File Manager, kind of take a quick look at that. Same idea, your 80 gigabyte partition lives inside this 180 gigabyte partition. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down now. All right. You notice that it just booted up Windows like nothing else was installed on the system. So we got to fix that. Let's shut this down. Or actually, let's restart it. And then we're going to use the boot entry key for the UEFI BIOS again. Spam the boot key. All right. Here we are, and we see Ubuntu is actually the first entry in the boot menu, so you would think that it would be first in boot order, but that's not how the wonderful world of computing works. So this partition 2 is my Ventoy. This is where we were just booted into Windows Boot Manager. This Ubuntu label is actually Linux Mint, the installed version. Navigating all this sometimes almost gets confusing because you have like a matrix, things inside of things inside of things, you know. All right. We are here again inside Linux Mint. All right. I'd love to go through this screen, but we're just going to leave it. I'll tell you what, one thing I like to do, honestly, is just click this button right here and get into dark mode. Other than that, we'll leave everything default. We're going to get in here. We're going to get into our notes again. The same notes in the same drive. Demo dual boot notes, display, text file, and get into the part where we make the adjustment. After restoring Windows Boot Manager, here, let's make this bigger. For some reason, on video, it just looks nice if it's bigger. All right. So after restoring Windows Boot Manager, Windows may set itself as the default boot entry. Imagine that. You wouldn't think Windows would do that, would you? You can fix that from Linux. So we're going to, well, we already booted from Linux, so we're going to set up GRUB to be the primary bootloader with these commands. So the first thing we're going to do actually is just edit the default GRUB file, and that's like a really common thing to do if you ever played around with Linux Mint. We'll use the nano editor. I'm just going to copy paste that command in. And I don't know how to blow this up, so you'll have to watch me edit it in small here. But let me adjust it down. And so the first one is the GRUB default. Now, I pretty much want Linux Mint to be the default, and generally it's, you know, in the UEFI BIOS where we talked about seeing Ubuntu at the top. So that tells me that Linux Mint is probably at the top. So that means the default in the GRUB menu, if you wanted it to be Linux Mint, it should be 0. And if you wanted it to be Windows, it probably would be 3. I'm guessing here. Let's resize this text editor just a little. All right. So I'm not going to change GRUB default at all on my system, but if you wanted GRUB to automatically boot Windows, you would probably change that to 3. You might have to experiment with it a little. And then on GRUB timeout, so there's a timeout counter. Let's go back into the terminal. There's a timeout counter. And if you type menu here, it will show the timer. That's all it does. And then the timeout, I want 15 seconds. You could do 10 seconds. Some people even do 5. But after that timer is over, it's going to boot whatever the default OS is set to. So if you just want it to boot Windows when you turn the PC on, you're probably gonna put 3 right here. And if you want it to boot Linux Mint, it's probably going to be 0. It's actually whatever number in that BIOS boot entry that it is, if that makes sense. All right. So then the next step, we've edited that file. The next step is to save this with the nano editor, and you save that by doing Control O, and you hit Enter, and then Control X exits out of that file. Now you could just go back into it again if you wanted to confirm that the changes were remaining there, and click Exit back out of it again just to make sure. And then you just need to do a sudo update grub, and that's going to rewrite all the grub files. So you basically reinstalled grub there by doing sudo update grub. Now what we're going to do is list the boot entries in the UEFI. There's actually 2 systems of boot entry. So this lists the UEFI boot entries. And so our current one that we're booted in is number 1 here. And the boot order is 0000, 0001, 0005, and 0006. And then the details of which one's which is 0000 is Windows Boot Manager. So that's our Windows. And then our Linux Mint, which is actually Ubuntu, is on the 0001. And these other 2 partitions, this is a pluggable USB, so I'm not going to do a boot entry at all for those. So I'm just going to copy paste this line right here, this example, down, and I'm going to edit it for our numbers. So we want 0000 to be second, and we want the grub menu, which is part of Ubuntu, to be 0001 right here. So if you want grub, the boot menu, to show up first, you want Ubuntu to be first in the boot menu. All right. Okay, hit enter. And let's see. This is your confirmation. Boot order is set to what you typed in. Okay. And then basically that's it. There is some other notes. I'll try to leave this dual boot notes file somehow in the description, or a pointer to it in the description so that you can find it. There's some additional notes in case you had trouble in some way or another. Here's a little copy paste to put a manual boot entry in for Windows if you would need that. So there's more notes there, but we had 100% success with everything. So really, all we have to do now is do a restart. We won't touch the machine. We won't touch the boot entry key. It should boot up to GRUB, and it should give us a menu entry for Linux Mint and Windows. And Linux Mint will be set as the default. Now I could show you how to set the Windows as a default real quick if you want. So see, Linux Mint's at the top, and that's what the bar lands on when it opens. And I already moved the key, but there would be a timer somewhere in here. And then we see the Windows Boot Manager. Let's boot back into Linux Mint just for giggles here. I'm not ready to do the new user screen yet. What I want to do is come back in here. I'm hitting the up arrow to go through history, and I want to do sudo nano default grub again real quick, just as a just this little demo. if we wanted Windows to be the default, I think we can change this to 3. And just for time's sake, let's change this to something fairly quick, like 3 seconds. Okay. So, well, no, 5 seconds. That's 3 seconds is no time at all. So Control O is to write, and then Enter, and then X to exit. And now we got update, got a sudo update grub again, rewrite it. And now if I do a reboot, what should happen is the grub boot menu will give you the option to go down to Linux Mint, but if you don't touch it, it just boots into Windows automatically. Oh, I didn't mean to push shutdown. That's okay. I'll restart it with the button on my computer. Grub menu. I have UEFI firmware settings. I have the wrong default. Let's actually do our boot entry key here. So, all right. So you can see here, it's number 2 instead of number. So 3 is partition 1 on the USB stick, which is nothing. I really should have removed the stick. Let's actually do that. Let's remove the stick. Just turn it off. Yeah, just hard powered off. You can do that in the UEFI. Right. I removed the install stick. Now I'm going to power it back on and spam my boot key. And then the Windows Boot Manager is entry number 2. So now let's go ahead and boot into Linux, edit that default to number 2. It shows up as number 3 right here, but it's number 2 in the UEFI system. And that's the system that matters, I think. Let's get this right. I'm starting to wonder how many times I'm allowed to boot a computer without killing it. I've probably booted this computer thousands of times doing this exact same type of work here. That's why virtual machines would probably be a smarter choice. They're just not near as much fun. You actually run into things on hardware that you don't run into on virtual machines. Like this right here, you probably wouldn't run into this on a virtual machine. And we're going to hit Control O, Enter to write, and then Control X. And we got to do the update again. Right. Now, if we just hit restart, not shut down, it should do what I expected to do, which is to simply turn the computer on or restart it. The GRUB black screen boot menu should pop up for about 5 seconds. It should have the default entry on Windows. And right here at the bottom somewhere, you should be able to see a timer, and it boots into Windows, giving us the option to boot into Linux Mint. Isn't that great? Isn't that awesome? And now with this virtual drive in Windows, let's say you had a bigger drive, you could do this same operation on multiple Windows installations. You could have Windows 10 Enterprise, Windows 10 IoT, Windows 10 Pro. You could have all these different virtual installations of Windows. And Windows is really none the wiser. It loves it. This thing just, it flies. This thing opens fast. So let's do a video here real quick. My man that I've been talking about here. Not this guy. This guy. This isn't the exact video. Let's see if we can find the exact video real quick. We'll just go into his stuff, and it's the exact one. This is a great one here convert an old OS into a virtual disk. That will help you convert these.
Have you got an old Windows
this.
operating system that you don't want to let go of? Toolbox only supports standard VHD files and not full hardware of the PC.
I'm not going to go through it all. I don't want to
But if
get
you're using a home edition,
in trouble here, but let's pause it. He's using the disk to VHD in this one. And the best dual boot is the smarter way. This is the one that I really recommend watching all the way through.
which will be more efficient.
The smarter way to dual boot, and then just make those changes that we talked about. Let's get my presentation file open one more quick time, and then I'm going to end the video. Just make sure if you want to do a full install, just make sure that you go to the previous version setup, because I'm pretty sure in his video here, he doesn't do that.
As I might not use all the disk
let's
space
check.
available. So there's no point in allocating disk space up front if I don't use it.
So I don't think he has to, because his installer is already the older version, so he must be installing something a little bit older here. But on the newer Windows 11 24H2, you have to actually click into this previous version setup, right? And your installer then will look exactly the way his does. So you can follow this video all the way through to install new Windows versions, basically, with those couple of changes. And also this little minor deal here, where he installs it at 50 gigabytes. I think 80 is bare minimum for Windows 11. And personally, I like fixed size. You can mess with the dynamically expanding if you want. It's not a big deal. If you were doing a throwaway test install, that'd be a good one to use it for. But anyway, I think this is pretty much a subject that's been well covered. I wish you all the best, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye now.